believes that no judge is qualified to sit on traffic court, let alone on the Supreme Court, if he does not understand that the primary purpose of law and government is to protect innocent human beings from violence at every stage of life. Now, this issue of Supreme Court judges is critical because next month, voters in Mississippi will have an opportunity to amend the state constitution to define personhood as beginning at the moment of conception. Now, this may very well lead to a direct challenge to Roe v. Wade at the Supreme Court level. We need a Supreme Court in place who will choose life when that day comes. But we need a president who also understands and believes that the right to liberty is an unalienable God-given right and who will fight to protect it whenever it is under assault. This means, I believe, we need a president who understands that just as Islam represents the greatest long-range threat to our liberty, so the homosexual agenda represents the greatest immediate threat to every freedom and right that is enshrined in the First Amendment. It's a particular threat to religious liberty. For instance, Catholic charities have been forced out of the adoption business in one state after another because they believe that a child deserves to be raised by a mother and a father. Saw a middle school student in Texas just 2 weeks ago suspended for 2 days for sharing in a private conversation with another student his Christian conviction that homosexuality is wrong. Student clubs are being kicked off of one college campus after another because they hold fast to a biblical view of sexuality. Christian students are being tossed out of one graduate counseling program after another because they will not endorse the normalcy of homosexual behavior. We saw a Christian photographer in New Mexico fined $6,700 for politely declining to photograph a lesbian commitment ceremony, even though lesbian relationships have no legal status in the state of New Mexico. We've seen bed and breakfast owners in one state after another hauled into court because they believe that on their own private property, sexual intimacy ought to be reserved for a man and woman in marriage. We're already hearing stories about how faith-driven chaplains, service members, and officers, even generals, are being urged to leave the United States military if they cannot endorse homosexual behavior. So we need a president who understands that every advance of the homosexual agenda comes at the expense of religious liberty. We need a president who understands that we must choose as a nation between homosexuality and liberty because we cannot have both. A president who understands that we must choose between homosexuality and liberty and who will choose liberty every time. And we also need a president who understands the importance of the institution of marriage to our nation's political and economic health. A president who understands that marriage is an institution created, established, ordained, and defined by God as the union of one man and one woman. And what God has defined, man must not redefine. British anthropologist by the name of J.D. Unwin. He studied 80 civilizations in world history. He discovered that every single civilization that practiced and honored monogamy was stable, prosperous, and successful. And yet every single civilization which rejected monogamy soon began to deteriorate, to decline, and wound up on the ash heap of world history. So we need a president who understands that protecting the institution of marriage is not just about morality, it's not just about children, it is about the strength, stability, prosperity, and survival of the United States. Now, this means we need a president who will endorse a federal marriage amendment. Now, don't fall for the lie that this is somehow inconsistent with states' rights. You cannot amend the federal Constitution without getting voters in 38 states to agree with you. You cannot get any more states' rights than that. Now, we also need a president who will vigorously defend the Defense of Marriage Act in court, and I believe we need a president who, on his first day in office as Commander-in-Chief, will revoke permission to military chaplains to perform same-sex marriages on military installations. President who will work vigorously to reinstate the ban on open homosexual behavior in the United States military. 67% of our frontline troops last year told the Pentagon that homosexuality in the military will compromise recruitment, retention, and readiness. We need a Commander-in-Chief who will work to reinstate the ban on homosexuality, not just as a matter of morality, but because our national security depends on it. In fact, I believe that we need a president who will treat homosexual behavior not as a political cause at all, but as a threat to public health. The FDA will not allow a male to donate blood if he has had sex with another male even one single solitary time since 1977. They cannot play Russian roulette with the nation's health. The Centers for Disease Control, not the research arms, by the way, of FRC or AFA, has determined that of all of the males who have ever been diagnosed with HIV/AIDS in the history of the epidemic, 90% of them contracted it either through having sex with other males, 60%, injection drug use, 22%, or both, another 8%. Now what this means is that homosexual behavior represents the same threat to human health that injection drug use does. I believe we need a president who understands that neither homosexual behavior nor injection drug use represent lifestyles that any responsible government ought to normalize, legitimize, legalize, protect, sanction, or subsidize. Now, we need a president who believes that the right to private property is as sacred a right as the right to life and liberty. A president who understands that the involuntary redistribution of wealth